Hi guys, Adrian Cale here, and just a reminder, these videos are a supplement, not a replacement for the real NLP training. Now, what I'd like to do here is to rehash on one of the vital things that we cover in our training, the deletion, distortion, and generalization. How that occurs, why it's more important, how we can take more control over it, and then afterwards we'll move on to the NLP simple communications model. Okay, we have more advanced models, but this is more of a simple one that we'll share. But firstly, deletions, distortions, and generalizations. Don't worry if you can't see the whiteboard, it only says deletes, distorts, and generalizes. Now this is really important for you to note because this stuff automatically takes place inside of your brain. The thing is, it happens unconsciously and it happens at lightning speed, and it might not be happening in your favor. So if we can take more control over it, or perhaps steer it in different directions, that's when anything becomes possible. Okay, now, delete, distort, and generalize is taught in most NLP around the world. Concept being that the world is so big, that our brains has to delete a lot of the information. If you notice what's around you, you don't actually need to notice if there's air passing. You don't need to notice any of the background noises. Even here when I'm talking with you, you might hear some background noises, but there's no need for it. You can delete that, and your unconscious automatically deletes a whole pile of stuff. Remember, as you're listening here, listening with full intent, if you're really listening here with full intent and perhaps noticing my background or noticing something about the voice, you probably haven't noticed something else, perhaps something else in your body, or perhaps you were unaware of how fast you were blinking or breathing just moments ago. So our brain deletes a pile of information. Okay, and now the brain distorts information. And the brain generalizes information. But I'll give you a really quick and what I think is a cool experience of this. This experience I had was so cool, I actually took a photograph of it. I live in Australia, and I've had a few snakes in the house over the years. And I was walking in the lounge room one day, and suddenly it was like right 2 meters away from me was like half of a snake on the ground, just like 2 meters away, just there, and my heart was beating. And I actually like snakes. But the thing is, it's probably a friendly python snake, but my heart was still beating and I wasn't sure. You know, because we generalize snakes are dangerous, snakes can kill you, but most snakes aren't. You know, most snakes are no worries whatsoever, but my brain generalized it as a snake, and it was actually a bit of a cloth. It was a bit of cloth, and it was just the way it was curled around. My brain saw it, and my brain distorted it. My brain distorted it into a snake, because what if it was? What if it was? Well, that snake could come out and bite me and I could die. Now, unrealistic. People don't really die in their homes of snake bites. But 2 years ago, I went to a funeral of a man who got bitten by a brown snake in his backyard just up the road. So, you know, there's fair call for it. So my brain took this little picture, this little cloth, and it distorted it into, is it a snake? And is it going to hurt me? But at the end of the day, it was just a python. Now, a couple of months ago, I found a python on my snake. I found a python on my fence. And my initial reaction was to jump, because, God, it was like 30 centimeters away. And my natural reaction, see, This is pre-conscious, is just to jump away from it. And then I very, very quickly, if not in a flash, I realize it's a python because it's on the fence. Brown snakes are on the ground generally, or taipans maybe climbing up, not on a fence the way it was. So I got excited. For it, and I yelled out for the kids, come on, look at this. It was absolutely beautiful. And I didn't know what kind of snake it really was, but I generalized that it's probably a python or some tree climbing snake because it's sitting like that on the fence. Okay, so the brain's constantly deleting, distorting, and generalizing. Now, this is the original model that came out in like the 70s and 80s and taught around the world. But John Grinder, the university professor who was the co-creator of NLP, later came out in his books, Turtles All the Way Down, I think it was 84 or something. He said that distortions and generalizations, like the distorting of information, the generalizing of information, is actually the result of the deletion. And that update should have came out like in the NLP world, but a lot of the old is still taught, and I still like to teach this. But there's one thing that I'm really questioning here. I'm really questioning, and I don't actually believe. I don't believe the brain deletes information. Well, okay, it does. But I believe the primary thing here isn't a deletion. I believe the primary thing is a selection. The brain selects. The brain selects the information that's most important. So when I was in my house, there's a lot of things I could focus on, but my unconscious saw this, little thing down there. My unconscious is so much more aware of what I'm consciously aware of. So my unconscious, remember the supercomputer, picked that thing up on the ground and went, my brain selected it. Didn't recognize what it was. It distorted it. It filled in the blanks. It's a snake. It can kill you. Okay? So I really believe the brain actually selects rather than deletes. Now, your unconscious sees so much more. What information gets selected? Only a small portion of the information gets selected. And then that information can be, and is often, distorted or generalized. And this all happens pretty damn fast, and is part of the unconscious processes. And that's one of the beautiful things about NLP. Because when we do some underlying or deep transformation, when there's changes in the brain, our brains can start to select new information that can support us. Okay, so nature is really efficient. You don't find tree roots going up into the sky, unless they're those kind of plants, right? Some plants do, right? But trees know what to do. They're efficient at it. Conditions are right. Roots go into the water. If there's like a water source and a root, the root will go for the water. It won't do like spins and fancy patterns and then go in the water. Water flows downhill. And yes, everything can be seen the other way. Water can go uphill as well, like rain or clouds, fog and stuff, right? But water goes downhill. So in the brain, our neurons and our brain takes the easy path. It takes the easy path and the efficient path. So our brains, like nature, are constantly trying to be more and more efficient. So by selecting the relevant information and by distorting and generalizing, it helps the brain be more efficient. Yeah? So our brain will make shortcuts. Our brain will make patterns. Yep. Our brain will try to protect us, even if it's not really a snake. and our brains will try to prove themselves right. So if you have someone who's really afraid of snakes and you take them out to the bush, there's a fair chance they're going to be more alert and they're going to see perhaps a variety of sticks which look like snakes, especially at night time. Where if you have someone who has no concern whatsoever, it'll be quite different. Yeah. Now, if you took both of these people to New Zealand, you might actually find the same behavior. There's no snakes in New Zealand. However, the person that has a fear of snakes, yep. Now, if you don't quite believe this or you want to know something closer to home perhaps, what about sharks? What about sharks? When the movie Jaws was released, it was disastrous for the diving industries and snorkeling industries around the world. Disastrous. In fact, there were a lot of people that wouldn't even swim in lakes. Okay? Now, if you're Australian, you might have also seen movies like Crocodile Dundee. And you may have a similar fear of sharks, but in creeks and rivers. And I've been in rivers here in Australia that I know are completely safe. There's a river not too far from me that's a beautiful, beautiful river. Blue Water or Rolling Stone, beautiful rivers. And I used to swim in there as a kid, but I could work on this, but I'm still a little bit careful there. And I feel a little uncomfortable swimming there at night. Even though swimming there at night is just the same thing as swimming there at day, I get uncomfortable at night because my brain just automatically does this thing. I don't know what it is, it just automatically does it, and it makes me a little bit scared. I'm a little bit scared to swim in these beautiful creeks at night, and sometimes even at day I'm a bit afraid about going out there. Yeah, a lot of the time there's no risk, but I still feel some fear. Now, luckily I can NLP that. When it came to speaking on the stage in front of masses of people, of course, I was nervous as hell. But I had some practice and I also had some coaching, so I didn't really get that fear. I just got excitement when it came to speaking out. Okay? So our brains will do this, and then one of the last points in there, remember the brain will try to prove itself right. So if it comes to swimming at night time and there could be sharks, even though some people are in a lake, they thought there could be sharks, they try to prove themselves right. They go, oh, but it's a really big area. Yeah, or me in the big dark creek at night time, my brain tries to prove itself right. Then it tries to go, oh, well one could come up. It's possible for one could come up, rather than going, it's totally fine and safe. So these processes don't always work in our favor, and remember, the brain likes to make shortcuts, patterns, and prove itself right. I'd like to give you an example of this and the DDG in action. And I'd like for you to imagine there's a round circle. Imagine there's a round circle, and up the top you got the number 12. On the right you've got the number 3, and at the bottom you've got the number 6. What number? So at the top there's a 12, on the right there's a 3, on the bottom there's a 6, and it's a circle. What number do you think is on the far left? 9. It's a clock. Now what I'm doing is I'm drawing a clock and I'm pointing a longer hand up somewhere, and I'm going to point a fat hand somewhere. So now the fat hand is pointing somewhere, and your brain is able to fill in the gaps and figure out what time it is. So our brain is able to fill in the gaps. Check this out. with regards to money, I feel sad because with regards to money, I feel angry because okay, if you answered those questions, congratulations. I have a full meditation where I go in with a process like that and people fill in the gaps, right? And it really helps underlying stuff come up. But that's an example of one, the brain filling in the gaps, looking for patterns, trying to prove itself right. And that's a wonderful process. Now, I want you to take a statement. Take a statement. I would like a Tesla. I would like a Tesla. I would like a Tesla. And I had a wonderful business client, and his wife spoke with him. They spoke about goals, and he wanted a Tesla, and she went and bought a Tesla. It was 3 centimeters big, and it was a little replica Tesla. Thank you, dear. Now, what's happened is he actually wants a real Tesla, and she's been a bit of a smartass and given him a toy one. But hey, he didn't say he wanted a real Tesla or a big Tesla. Now, what I personally want, I tell you I would like a Tesla, and I can tell you I would like a Tesla. But I've actually cut a lot of information off. I've deleted a lot of information. A more full expression would be, I would like a Tesla X. 2021 model, a real Tesla X. But I'm not prepared to buy one. So the short expression, I would like a Tesla, has information deleted, and what I've done here is I've started to expand it. I would like a Tesla X, a real one, 2021 model, a white one. I'll add more information, a white one, but I'm not prepared to buy one. And I can expand that even more. I'm not prepared to buy one yet. Yet, I could add a time to it. So even when we take something and expand it out, it's still missing information. Sometimes someone will tell you, or maybe you tell yourself, I'm not good enough. So that belief, I'm not good enough, can be expanded. When someone tells you a problem like, I don't like that, we can expand it into, you don't like that compared to what? You don't like that what? Never, ever? I mentioned meta in a previous video. Meta was originally a way to expand and recover the bigger picture. So the bigger picture is considered meta. Meta, bigger. So we take a small statement and we can use what we call later on the meta model and make it bigger. But what we actually tend to do is we tend to have a bigger map of the world, like I want a Tesla X, a wide one. I don't want to buy it though. And what we actually do is we constantly shrink it. So when you and I are talking, and when you are talking to your friends, you're already deleting so much information, which is why John Grinder originally had deletion, delete, distort, and generalize. Because when we are talking or doing therapy, so much information is there, the client deletes a whole pile of information, or it selects a little bit and shares that. So I hope you're more aware now of this delete, distort, and generalize. And as we go through the training, you will hear sometimes, oh, that's a distortion. You might hear that's a generalization. And I want you to pay more attention though to what is selected. or perhaps what is not selected. Because what is not selected is always going to be far bigger. Remember, on the center of the whiteboard, I've got a red cross. A red cross is a problem. Now, we can select the problem and select the problem every day, or we can select what's not the problem. And what's not the problem is so much bigger. If you think you're smart, if you think you know a lot, there must be so much more you don't know yet. Okay guys, so imagine we have a great big world, so much things going on. Could even change it to imagine a conversation going on. Imagine the conversation between a man and a woman. And the woman says to the man, blah, 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 blah. The man goes, oh shit. The man has a reaction. He's like, oh. When the woman says blah, 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 there's actually a whole ton of information coming. A whole ton of information coming. The man might hear a certain tonality. He might think, yep. Or if you're actually thinking about it, communication between two people is so complex. So complex, especially when you hear things along the lines of, you know, you don't trust me. Or I trust you, honey. There is so much communication going on. We've got the sounds of the voice, we've got the facial expressions, we've got the micro expressions, we've got the body language. And on top of that, the person receiving the communication has all their internal bullshit going on, you know. Now, if the girl's saying to the man, you know, can you take out the trash? The man might be thinking all kinds of things. Yeah, he could be thinking a million kinds of things. So there is so much going on that our brain has to apply this process. So the brain processes processes the deletion, and unconsciously we're like, okay, well, what can be deleted, or what do we need to select? So we got the outside world going on. We've got the outside world, the real world, which is like so big we can't comprehend it. And then we have our brain, or possibly mind. We have our brain, and the very first thing we do is, well, you know what? We can't actually even see the world. There is an amazing spectrum of colors and light, and we only get part of it. There's an amazing, huge spectrum of sound, but we can only capture a little bit of it. You know, there's these kind of dog whistles that people can't hear. The sounds are outside of our frequency. Yeah? And there's light that's outside of our frequency. So we only receive a portion of the world through our senses, right? Then what comes in goes through a process. And the process could be filtering. Filtering! So the information that does come in is then filtered. Filtering can be our deletion, distortion, our generalizations. There's also some other things that can happen right there. Part of our filtering system is much bigger than simply deletions, distortions, and generalizations, because we also have our internal beliefs, we have our preferences, we have had our past experiences. So a whole lot of filtering happens. And in that filtering process, with a whole pile of stuff happening, only a small portion gets through. And that's typically what we call our 5 plus or 2 minus chunks of information. A small bit of information gets through and gets into our brain, where we start to maybe process it. And when we process it, like, oh, that's a snake, or oh, that's a bit of tarp, oh, that's a bit of cotton. Oh, she's telling me to take out the trash. Okay. The word trash gets through, or the word snake gets through. It gets through the filtering process, and inside my brain I make a linguistic representation. Snake. My brain goes snake. And it can go through all the memories and pick snakes, or it can fast as snake. And I've got an internal representation of snake, or junk, or taking out the trash, or a bit of cotton. And these linguistic representations, we call them linguistic because we can talk about it. Yeah, we can talk about it and we can store it. And this is all stored deep in our unconscious, but we can raise it up and we can talk about it. So I thought I saw a snake. At this point, we can talk about it and we can say, hey, Adrian, don't worry, not all snakes are dangerous. And this is where people typically do coaching and stuff, and advising and helping. We do this with our linguistic maps. Oh, so you're afraid of snakes, blah, 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 no, blah, blah, blah. Oh, such a pity you're afraid of snakes. Not all snakes are dangerous. Yeah, I know, but I just get this thing when snakes come. Okay? You can talk to someone who is afraid of snakes for hours. You can show them all kinds of stuff and they'll probably still be afraid of snakes. The same way someone will have a phobia or a belief. And typically people try to talk it out. But here's the thing. What we got to do is, rather than talk it out in the brain, what we tend to do with NLP is we attack the filters. We go into the filters. Because we're better off going before the reaction happens. We want to have our interventions before. We want to have our interventions before things happen. Key point. And that's one of my favorite things with NLP is if we have someone that's afraid of snakes or has an allergy, what we can do is we can approach it in a way that can wipe it. And then the client can easily, for the rest of their life, handle snakes. Or the allergy. They don't have to talk to themselves. They don't have to say, oh, it's not a dangerous snake. We can just change it like that. And it's gone. Okay? Pretty cool stuff. So we get the world, information goes in through the filters, and then it goes into the brain where it forms a linguistic maps. I'll give you a picture of this. From the linguistic maps, we have in the picture down below this thing called state, and you're probably clear of what an emotional state is. Emotional state, not New South Wales or Queensland, the emotional state, and this is all interconnected. Your emotional state affects what's filtered. Your emotional state affects your linguistic maps. Your filters affect your state. Your state affects your linguistic representations. It's all interconnected. Interconnected. And this is great for us because this gives us many leverage points. This gives us many leverage points. So the emotional state is something we mentioned in a previous exercise where we spoke about taking the information from a critic and not the emotion. Okay? Remember, when we take emotion from people, it can distort the information. So there we have our communications model. The outside world, information comes in through the filters. We get our linguistic representations. We have our state. The filters, the linguistic representations, and the state are all interconnected. The result of all these is a lot of points where we can make interventions and get leverage. The result of all this is our behavior. Got that? Have a look at the picture, have a look at the map. Remember, I've made this video so we don't have to cover this in the classroom. It is to supplement real NLP training. Now, as we move forward into the following weeks, we're going to be looking at things like rapport, calibration, and then move into some more advanced things like submodalities and anchoring. These are some of the finer elements. I'd like for you to remember the model we shared about unconscious incompetence. Remembering a girl bought me a book once and I thought I was Zen, yes! But it turns out I had the EQ of a rock. I was incompetent, emotionally incompetent, and she gave me this book. Me, in my emotional incompetence, I saw body language, I saw her face, I saw the micro expressions, I saw the book. I thought she was interested in me, like, romantically. I think she kind of had pity on me. I thought I knew. But there were things I wasn't that good at. And now really, guys, I wasn't stupid. I think I had 3 houses at the time. Yeah? I wasn't a stupid guy. But there were things I was unaware of. My brain was filtering out stuff I was unaware of. So as we get into this future stuff, some of it you will already know. Some of it will be simple. And if any of it is simple, I'd like for you to expand into noticing more. Find ways to challenge yourself. Find ways to engage. If you can do the exercises, push yourself to do them better. Get into the know-nothing state sometimes. Don't think I know it all. We're all smart. There's a lot we know, but we want to get into the unknown. So as we approach these subjects of rapport, calibration, later on representation systems, and especially when we get to submodalities and stuff, that stuff will blow you away. I want you to make sure you go forward thinking, okay, what can I take away from this? Yeah. What can I focus on this week? How can I expand? How can I step into the unknown? How can I keep learning? And then you will keep learning.